Did Adam and Eve have a good marriage? At least they didn't have problems with in-laws on either side. After their grand mistake under the grand tree, they lived without knowing when and how they would die. Not daring to ask, but looking for a meaning in the silence between God's words. Hoping for a handbook on how to live, how to love, and what to do about pain and death. But who died first, Adam or Eve? If we follow the story, the first death was a murder. Their son Abel was the first to be grieved. Let's say that Adam, as the first man, was the first one to pass on. What was it like for Eve to see him go through that grand change? Did she expect she would meet him again in the garden of all gardens? What did she know about death? We're somewhere in the outskirts of Eden, in Romania, in a village on the shore of the Danube. 2,000 years ago, Romans built fortresses here. Even today, farmers sometimes dig out ancient bronze bracelets in their fields and Jewish coins from the time of Bar Kokhba. The name of the village, Požežena, means glowing fire and wife. People trust in God, and they have chosen a handbook for their faith. Most men and women are Christian Orthodox, but some of them became Baptists a long time ago. Here, Baptists observe the New Testament very strictly. They don't smoke, they don't drink alcohol, and they don't dance. They only play music in church. Their guide to fulfilling this belief is Pastor Petru Gruia.
Evanghelia pe care o propovăduim, vestea bună, are podoabele ei. Și una din podoabele acestei evanghelii...
The gospel, the message of the Lord, is full of treasures, and one of them is death. One shouldn't be afraid of death. It's only a frontier between this world and the world to come. Death should be regarded as a celebration, a joyful event, because it frees us of our troubles and takes us to Jesus.
Că te scapi de necazurile, de greutățile, de încercările din lumea asta și ajungi la Domnul Iisus. La oficierea serviciului de înmormântare în cadrul unei familii, când am auzit despre ce s-a întâmplat, durerea,
When I hear of someone who has died, I think of the family that stays behind. Death also causes sorrow and sadness, so the first thing I do is I get in touch with the other brothers and sisters. Together we can comfort the suffering family. We hold prayer vigils in their home and offer spiritual support. We encourage them and tell them what the Bible teaches us. God may have caused the wound, but He also has the means to heal it. And so we learn to cry with those who cry.
Ce nu pot face oamenii, poate să facă Dumnezeu, și Biblia ne învață să plângem cu cei ce plâng. După aceea, când ajunge ziua înmormântării, în ceasul, ora, când se hotărăște, se merge
On the
acasă.
day of the burial, we go to their house and we pray. We read passages from the Bible about hope. Then, in the courtyard, we hold the burial service. We do not take the dead into church, like they do in other confessions, because the church, the building itself, doesn't have any effect on the dead. According to our belief and rules, we have to choose the shortest way from the dead person's house to the cemetery.
Sau un mort, dacă intră în biserică, să facă o slujbă aici, nu se întâmplă nimic. Noi avem, potrivit statutului nostru de organizare și de mărturisire de credință, de acasă și până la cimitir să alegem drumul cel mai scurt. Baptiștii din România,
Romanian Baptists are united because they have always stayed close to Scripture.
la lucrarea aceasta este că au stat lângă cuvânt. În America,
I've had the chance to visit churches in the United States which claimed they were Baptist, but they do many things that are not allowed for Baptists here in Romania. Over there, they say that you have to feel good in church. Go to church to get a good feeling or to meet people, and then go out to eat in those big restaurants nearby.
te-ai întâlnit cu cutare și cutare și lângă biserică sunt restaurantele acelea mari, faimoase. Alte biserici.
In some churches, they stop service for a coffee break or a cigarette break. We don't do this here. The divine service consists, as always, of morning praying hour, Sunday school, worship service, and gospel sermon, all in all 4 hours. Over there, they keep the prayers as short as possible, they sing a little, and then let's go home or to the restaurant. It's just like in that passage in Scripture, where the rich fool says, "Soul, take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this night your soul shall be called for."
Mâncă, suflete, bea și veselește-te că ai multe bogății și asta. Dar, o voce a spus, la noapte ți se va cere sufletul.
Pavel and Maria's marriage lasted 58 years. They had 4 daughters, and Maria is a great-grandmother now. She was 18 when Pavel shyly told her, "I love you." It was because of these words that she decided to marry him.
Am aflat aici, am mers la biserică. Am pus
We met in church. We were Baptists. Pavel grew up without a father, and I grew up without a mother. After his father died, his father's sister came and took everything away from their house. So when I married him, he didn't even have a bed. It was me who brought the bed and bedclothes along.
Am adus eu pat, soale pentru pat. Pe tata meu l-a luat atunci, l-a luat el era primar pe vremea aia.
At the time when the Communist Party began to set up the collective farms, my father was the village mayor. He didn't want to join the collective, but they forced him. They threatened to kill him. So he signed on and gave them everything he had and became a member. But the people got angry at him and set fire to his cottage, to the animals. They set fire to the beehives and destroyed his orchard.
2 viței a avut în ea albinile toate le-a răsturnat, pomii, oltăoi, toți a frânte a dărâmat. Dar zis că dacă nu s-a fi băgat el, nu s-a fi băgat lumea.
They said that if he hadn't joined the collective, no one else would have been forced to join. But how could he resist if they came in the middle of the night and took him to the police station and threatened to kill him?
Deci că trebuia neapărat, n-am avut încotro, o să mor, o să mă bag. Atunci a lăsat să ai tu nimica.
They took everything. They didn't want you to keep anything for yourself. They wanted the land, the animals, the vineyards. After the collective was dissolved in 1990, they gave us back our land. And we managed to build ourselves a cottage. We kept sheep and goats there, cows and pigs. And Pavel spent lots of time over there at the cottage.
Și acum nu-i mult de când este 2 ani, baș la Paști, în Vinerea Neagră.
And now it's been 2 years, on Good Friday, since the cottage caught fire. I was here at home. It was 10 at night. Everything got caught in the fire. The cows, the fowl, the goats, the lambs, everything. The cottage, too. Everything was destroyed. It was terrible. But this wasn't the worst. The worst thing was that my Pavel died in the fire. He burned alive.
Nu-i nimica, că toate le-am făcut la loc, dar mi pare rău, dar bătrân. Că ars de viu săracul de ea. A fi mai avut loc de...
He was handsome and healthy. He wasn't ill or anything. We don't know why he had to die like this. He wanted to save the cow, but he couldn't get out of the stable anymore. They only found parts of him, mostly bones. No hands, no legs, nothing. He burnt up.
Atât a fost. Încolo n-a avut picioare, n-a avut mâini, n-a avut nimic. Tot a fost ars.
In the village, everybody was up on their feet. Everybody was outside. I saw the fire, but I couldn't move. I started shaking terribly. My son-in-law immediately ran up to the cottage. He was barefoot. He had been in bed. When he got there, it was already too late. And 2 of my daughters ran to the cottage and they looked for him and shouted, "Daddy, Daddy, where are you?" But there was no Daddy. Daddy had burned to death.
Taicu, unde-i taicu? Unde-i taicu? Nu-i taicu, taicu ars și se mai cați. Că l-a dus acasă, l-a luit și l-a adus acasă.
They didn't let me see him. They brought what was left of him in a blanket on the back seat of a car. But he had a burial worthy of a king. 10 pastors had come and so many people. The line of people went from our church to the edge of the village, and he had 25 crowns on his grave. We filmed everything.
Tare mormântare, eu fi-am filmat la... Tare mormântare frumoasă a avut. El n-a avut cu nimeni nici un scandal.
Pavel was on good terms with everybody. He liked to mind his own business. But it seems that God likes to call on good people as well, not only on bad ones. If he had died in another way, it wouldn't have been so hard for me. It was on Good Friday, and Pavel went to church, to the evening service. He even got up and sang. When he came back, I said, "Let's have supper." But he said, "I'm not hungry. I'm going to the cottage." And I saw him take his little bag and leave.
Nu puteam curca aici. Unde altă mușcă ea nu s-o? S-a băgat două... Ea și după...
Where are all the flies coming from? That screen at the door is no good. This is Maria's cousin, Lina. He went to church that day and sang, "Under your cross, sweet Jesus." And I said to myself, does he have to sing the whole song? It has quite a few stanzas, but he sang all of them. And a little later he was dead. Oh Lord, I didn't know till the morning. You don't hear a thing in the back where I sleep. But they said the whole village was in turmoil. If the fire brigade had made it earlier, they might have still saved something. But they were late, because they didn't know which road to take. And when they finally arrived, it was too late. This is the cottage that they rebuilt. Maria and her daughters received so much help that the cottage grew to be a house. It has a view over the village and the Danube Valley.
대답이 맛있는 거. Журёры вспоминаю.
Lina has 3 daughters. 2 of them became doctors. Years ago, one daughter fled across the green border with her husband and the baby. They made it to Los Angeles. The other 2 daughters settled in a town nearby. Lina doesn't want to leave the village. She has lived in this house with her husband and his parents, and now the house is hers. Ilie and Lina were 20 when they got married. Like their parents, they were Baptists. Do you want to be my wife? He asked me. And I answered, I don't know. Then he said, well, think about it. My mom was against the marriage. She said Ilie's mother was a mean woman. But my father liked the idea because he had been on good terms with their family all along. So in the end, I married Ilie.
Ar venit și m-ar cerut și ar fost de acord. A fost nuntă mare, că am fost sărășii atunci.
The wedding wasn't big. The times were hard after the war. I didn't even have money for a wedding dress. My mother and I went to sell beans, so we made some money to buy me a wedding dress.
Magazinile ăștia. M-am dus acolo în Pojenia Sârbă cu un netru de fasole. Am dus, de m-a dat bani ca să-mi iau câta stampă, să-mi fac câta roche. Și ea că am lucrat până când s-a făcut colectivul. Am lucrat.
We worked our land until the collective was set up. Ilie found work in a town nearby. He worked there for 30 years on building sites for the mining company.
Până ea, cu 30 de ani a lucrat tot acolo. Că de când s-a spart pe urmă CAP-ul, am primit pământul înapoi. Că 10 ani l-am lucrat cu el, pământul.
In 1990, we got our property back and worked our fields for 10 years. We sold one and bought a tractor because we didn't want to ask the bank for money. They might have taken away our house if we couldn't pay back the loan. So we sold some land and bought everything we needed: a plow, a trailer, a reaping machine. We were very happy to have our land back.
Alva plug și a făcut remorcă. Așa, tot ce ne-a trebuit pentru pământ. Că am fost bucuroși că aveam pământ. Ne-am dus, am semănat în toate locurile și mai am avut aici la un loc deasupra de drumul mare.
One day we came back from sowing beans. It was lunchtime, and Ilie said, "I'll go to the valley to get grass, so we won't have to worry till next week." It was just before Easter, and we had 4 pigs to feed. There was good soft grass growing in the valley. But I had to take down the curtains to wash them that day, and I needed his help. And I said, "Let's have lunch first." But he said, No, I've had a large breakfast. I'll eat when I get back. I'll take the tractor and drive to the valley. And I said, "Why do you have to go right now? I won't have time to take care of the cows as well." And he said, "Don't worry, I'll be back before it's time to feed the cows, and I'll help you with the curtains too." What could I do? He set off like a rocket.
Lasă că el vine până atunci. Păi ce să-i fac? S-a dus ca pușca mers până în fur. S-a dus, nu i-a pornit tractorul, că a fost la mama.
He went to get the tractor, but the tractor wouldn't start. So he went to ask a neighbor for help, and the neighbor brought his own tractor to pull him and get him started. An hour later, I went out to see whether Ilie had left, just in time to see him climb on the tractor. And then he drove off. At 4 o'clock, a friend came and said, "Aunt Lina, I want to tell you something. Promise you won't get angry at me." I felt my heart jump and I knew Ilie was dead. But the man kept telling me how Ilie had broken his leg, and I said, "Don't tell me stories. I know he's dead. He could have made it home with just a broken leg." So I asked my neighbor for help and he drove to the valley. He found Ilie. The tractor had jumped backwards down a slope.
S-a dus ăsta vecinul acolo. Ce mai tractoriu, cum a scăpat așa prărâpă, cum a fost aici, el a dat înăpoișelea și a scăpat roata de înăpoi sub trâpa și atunci s-a dus înăpoișelea. Eu t-am venit, am telefonat.
Then I called my daughters in Reșița. They were fast. They arrived within an hour, before their father was brought home from the valley. The police went there as well to find out what happened. Everybody went to take a look. I stayed home. I just cried. They said the tractor had jumped backwards, it got stuck on the slope, and Ilie was catapulted into the air. They said the big wheels kept turning on the spot until the fuel went out.
Roțile la tractori, până s-a terminat motorina din rezervor toată. Atâta s-a... Și nu. El n-a putut să sară.
A doctor came as well. He said he didn't need to make an autopsy because the cause of death was visible. Ilie had broken his neck. Then my daughters washed him and dressed him.
Ruptă junghitura, că de-aia a murit așa iută. Și pe urmă că l-a spălat, l-a îmbrăcat. A avut mormântare frumoasă, a fost de la Reșița, corul bărbăcesc, au fost 2 păstori.
He had a beautiful burial with 2 pastors and the men's choir from Reșița. Lots of people came from the villages around. Everybody who knew him came. There was so much pain.
L-au cunoscut toți, ar venit. A fost durere mare. Au, zic, Iliu, unde ți-a ieșit sufletul? Precoasta.
Oh, Ilie, why did you have to die there, on a slope, with a hungry belly and a bottle of water at your feet? Who can I talk to about my sorrow?
Ce să mai spun? N-a ieșit să spun la pământ. A avut un vis. Dar mie nu m-a spus. I-a spus la...
He had a dream a while before this happened. He didn't tell me about it, but he told some friends. He dreamed that our house had lost its roof and you could see the sky from all the rooms. And he told our friends, I'm afraid Lina is going to die because she's so skinny.
Și când a venit în vale, a văzut că plafoanele toate ar picat și să dege șeriul din cameră. Și atunci el spune, faci că asta numai Lina, mă, ce încă moare, că ea e slab.
Luckily, we had the chance to visit our daughter in Los Angeles. We spent 3 months with her. But even there, he had to go to work and make money.
La un loc s-a dus și el să facă bani. Au, cu ea că ce-am pățit. Cu baba căta, cu ea am trăit. M-a văzut cu ea toată forma. Că ascungea și ouăle.
And what I went through with my mother-in-law. She was calling me names. She was hiding the food. I cooked for the men who helped us get wood from the forest, and she said, let's not eat, let's wait till the evening when they get back. But I saw her secretly take some meat and cake and go into the garden to eat by herself. I was even afraid to take a piece of bread. She used to call my mother names as well and threw her out of the house twice. Sometimes my little daughter wanted to play outside, but my mother-in-law would lock her up and leave the house. She went to visit people, she just took off by herself. I was at work at the collective, but my mother passed by our house and heard my daughter cry. So she climbed inside through the neighbor's yard and freed her. Later, my mother-in-law yelled at her and said she shouldn't spoil the kid. You see, I had to stand all this because I was getting along really well with my husband. But her, she took a chair and wanted to hit my father-in-law. She said, "You'll be as flat as a frog." He was afraid of her. She used to say, "My children will have a good life because we didn't do wrong to anyone." Right. Her daughter went mad and died, her son-in-law got killed in an accident, and her own son died in an accident. One shouldn't talk like this, because God hears everything.
Vezi, nu mai spun nimic, că Dumnezeu, El nu e ca omul să zi în cap cu boata. Mai El știe când. Până acolo, la capul satului, le număr.
So I keep counting the widows. I start on our lane. I count them, and there are more and more of them.
Câți-s? Ia că dașea la geal, e la zina lui Costoni, e văduvă. Atunci la Creța lui Veloni văd. Ia că la mine, la Ieța, la Ana lui Remu, la Mărgălina lui Țărăni. Atunci la Maria lui Miron, o casă și deloc chiar e văduvă. Pe la Nuța lui Truga. Atunci la Ana lui Mila, la Solomia, la Elena lui Gaia, la Bucureșteana aia, la lui Bocea. Atunci la Silvia lui Paia, sunt două, la un colț acolo.
The men have died and we're all alone now. I don't know why. There are still some men left on the other lane, but on ours, almost none.
Pe plasa din vale, parcă tot mai este câțiva oameni, dar aici...
Slavă ție, Dumnezeul nostru, slavă ție, Împărate Ceresc, Mângâietorule, Duhul adevărului, care pe tutine și pe toate ne împlinești, visierul bunătăților, dădătorule de viață, vino și te sălășluiește într noi și ne curățește pe noi de toată întunăciunea. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi.
The Garden of Eden certainly had an exit gate. Hopefully, there is one designed for entrance. If there should be many gates, don't we all hope to stand in the right line and to own the right passport? Father Ion Delcu, who recently settled here with his wife, is trying to balance values of Christian orthodoxy with ancient local traditions.
Moartea, de fapt, nu este altceva decât o răsplată a omului din această viață. Moartea este o continuare a vieții. Moartea nu este gata, omul a murit și de aici nu mai există niciun.
Death is nothing but a reward for the life that has passed. It's not that after death there are no more ways to reach God and everything is ruined. No. Death is a continuation of life. And death pays you back according to your lifestyle. If you lived your life in a good way, you are going to be full of joy in heaven. Death would be something amazing and absolutely positive. You would experience a kind of joy you have never felt before while living on earth. But if you lived your life in an unclean way, in continuing excess, then hearing about death could be disturbing, because you don't feel ready for it.
Moartea te-ar cutremura atunci când ai auzit de ea, pentru că nu te-ai simțit pregătit. În ceea ce privește tradiția Bisericii Ortodoxe, există câteva lucruri de făcut înainte de a înmormânta pe cel răposat. Cei care sunt rânduiți de către familie.
In Christian Orthodox tradition, there are certain things which have to be taken care of before a burial ceremony. First, the family has to appoint the people who will dig the grave. After the grave diggers, as they are called here and probably everywhere else in the country, after the grave diggers return from the cemetery, other members of our community come to pick up the church flags. A procession is formed, which departs for the dead person's home. There, everybody waits for the priest. After the priest arrives, he prays in the house one last time, and then the coffin and the procession leave for church. And there, more prayers and songs are followed by the actual burial service. This is the culminating point of the burial ceremony. After this ceremony in church, the procession begins its journey to the cemetery. There's another important element along the way from the dead person's house to the church and from the church to the cemetery. The procession stops in front of the houses of friends or other family members of the deceased. They request the priest to pray for the one who has just died or for other people who have died earlier in the family. These stops are called restings. Upon arriving at the cemetery, we pray there one last time.
Pomenirea răposatului de către prieteni, cunoscuți, vecini și cei ai familiei. La cimitir, odată ajunși acolo, mai se face o rugăciune, când înainte de a se pune capacul pe cadavru, le-am explicat.
Before the lid is placed onto the coffin, the deceased is covered with a shroud, a white sheet. But many people here reject the shroud, and if they accept it at all, they don't want it to cover the face. They only cover the deceased up to the chest. They feel the dead should have clear sight. I have tried to make them understand that there is nothing to see anymore. Even our Lord Jesus was completely wrapped in a shroud.
Mântuitorul nostru Iisus Hristos a fost învăluit tot cu giurgiu. Unele familii, unele poate nu mai îmbrățișează acest lucru.
Most families put money into the dead person's hand or pocket, so he can pay the tolls and taxes that might be demanded on the way to heaven. They think something like this just has to exist, but we know that money is not needed there.
Plătite. Ori noi știm destul de bine că acolo, sus în ceruri, nu mai e nevoie de bani. După aceea se stropește cadavrul cu vin și cu ulei.
Then the body is sprinkled with oil and wine. The coffin is closed and the dead person can be buried. Everybody who has joined the procession and who has walked along to the church and to the cemetery is invited to come to the family's house. There, a supper or dinner is offered in memory of the deceased.
De către ai casei la pomană, cum se spune. Pomana e de fapt o masă, se dă o masă într-o pomenire a celui care a plecat dintre noi. Urmează rugăciuni pe care le aduce, ca așa cum v-am zis, timp de 40 de zile, rugăciuni pe care...
For the next 40 days, we keep praying for the one who has left us. Family members go to church, they pray and light candles for the soul of the deceased, and they ask the priest to remember him and mention his name during service. After these 40 days have passed, another important ceremony is held in church for the soul of the one who has died. On this occasion, the people who are present are offered gifts and something to eat. This memorial service is repeated after 1 year, and it can be celebrated later again, as often as the family wishes.
Iar după aceea, tradiția sau Biserica Ortodoxă spune că acest parastas se poate oficia ori de câte ori vrea familia. Lucrurile ce se dau de pomană celui răposat, începând cu mâncarea și, eu știu, unele bunuri, ca și haine, dacă e bărbat.
The gifts are handed out to poor people or to members of the family who are in need. If the deceased is a man, the gifts can include a suit and a hat, but also shoes and shirts. Basically, everything a man would need to walk around in this world. Of course, these things are not handed out because the dead might need them. They're offered either to someone who is dear to the family or to a poor man in the village, so that the man who receives the gifts is happy about them and is ready to use them. In this way, he would remember the one who has died and pray for his soul. The clothes, and especially wearing them, is a reminder to pray.
Sufletul celui care plecase dintre noi și cu hainele lui îmbrăcate, cu hainele date de pomană, ca să zic așa, el se roagă lui Dumnezeu pentru cel răposat. În învățătura ortodoxă se spune că moartea, sau mai bine zis, sufletul omului imediat după...
Orthodox doctrine claims that the soul of someone who has died doesn't leave earth immediately. It wanders around for 40 days, waiting for the first judgment. Because there are two kinds of judgment, a personal one and the final one before God. At the end of the 40 days, the first and personal judgment takes place before one's own conscience. It's as if one looked into a mirror. At that moment, the soul will realize what went wrong in life and what was good. The sad thing is that nothing can be done to change anything.
Dacă vreți o oglindă în față, vezi viața ta, vezi cum ai trăit și atunci conștiința ta va lucra mai bine și vei vedea ceea ce ai greșit și ceea ce ai făcut bine. Ceea ce este rău este că atunci nu mai ai nimic de făcut.
But in Orthodoxy, we also believe that within these 40 days, by praying, those who stay behind can help the soul to improve its situation. We can ease the burden of sins. After the 40 days have passed, the soul will finally go where it belongs, to heaven or to hell.
Sufletul va merge exact unde trebuie să meargă, în rai sau în iad.
After the fall of communism in 1989, people began to rebuild their lives. 140 tractors are rattling through Pozhezhena today. This is Anna. Her daughter Lenuța owns a tractor as well. Lenuța was president of the collective farm and later mayor of the village. Today she works as an accountant and still lives with her own family in her parents' house. One of her daughters commutes between Pozhezhena and Italy, where she has found work. Grandmother Anna has been a widow for 20 years. She had been married to Gavrilo, whom she lovingly called Ilo.
Acum știți cum se zice, babriu cu ăla, era mai mult, fiecare atras. I-a plăcut, nu vă spun că...
You know how girls are. They like to be courted, and not by one boy alone. Old Titu's son tried to come to our house, but the other boys didn't let him, because he was a Baptist. They threw stones at him. One evening his father came along, and he saw me sit in front of our house. But I wasn't alone. My future husband, Ilo, was there with me. And I saw old Titu look at me, and he wasn't pleased. So his son stopped coming. A little later, Ila's mother and his cousin Petru came to our house. And my mother welcomed my future mother-in-law, but asked the cousin to stay outside. And he replied, "I don't care, I'm coming in anyway." Sometime before that, on a Sunday, we wanted to join the dance in the park. We were 4 girls. We were coming from service in the Baptist church, and Petru, the cousin, didn't let us join the dance. He said, "What did you come here for? Go back to your Baptists. You can't dance with us." This is why my mother had told him he wasn't welcome, because he didn't let her daughter join the dance. They were joking, of course. And 2 weeks later, they officially came to ask my parents if they agreed to the marriage. They brought the usual basket of presents along, with a fried piglet, with cakes and money and clothes, and they said, "Please give us your daughter Anna."
S-a dus socrul meu la Timișoara să-mi cumpere pantofi de nuntă. Și a venit cu 2 pantofi într-un picior.
And my father-in-law went as far as Timișoara to buy me white wedding shoes. But he came back with 2 shoes for the same foot. One was number 6 and the other one was number 7. The saleswoman had made a mistake. But I couldn't be a bride with just 1 shoe, so I had to wear my old brown ones. The party was on a Sunday. We had a good time in my father's house till the early morning. Then the husband's family came to take the bride to her new home. But my father wouldn't let me go. They had to come back 3 times. When I finally left, he started crying and said, "I know I didn't raise her for myself, but can't she stay with me as long as I want?"
Că știu că trebuie să ducă de la mine, că n-am crescut-o pentru mine. Dar de ce nu stați până când vreau eu? Nu? Nu ne-am dus la biserică.
We didn't get married in church or in village hall. That's how it went in those days. We just had a party. My daughter was 6 when we officially got married, so we had a second wedding party. At noon we went to church, there was a ceremony with witnesses and all, and then we went home to have the party. We ate and drank and danced till the morning.
În curte, iar am stat toată noaptea. După masă ne-am dus la biserică, la biserică am venit acasă toată noaptea, iar ar dansat, ar mâncat. Dar 2 nunți a fost. A fost tot bine, am lucrat, ne-am chinuit.
Ila and I had a good life together. We worked hard because we wanted to build a proper house. Our old one was worse than a cottage. So we managed to finish the house, and then my husband got ill. He dried up like a fruit. He didn't feel any pain. He didn't have a wound, nothing. He just dried up. The doctor told Lenuța that he only had another 2, maybe 4 years to live. And after 2.5 years, he died. I had just come back with him from another treatment in hospital. It was evening already. Lenuța and her husband had guests. A policeman had come to dinner. So we ate and drank with them. We went to bed at 1 in the morning, after Ila had his glass of milk and I had my calming pills, because I was quite anxious those days. So we fell asleep. And after a while, I woke up and heard him say something.
Și eu luam tot napoton din ăsta ca să stau liniștită, că nu aveam și eu așa nervi, nu mai știam să... Și am adormit. La 1 ne-am pus în pat, am adormit și tot aud că el tot vorbește. Și tot aud că spune că... Deci că vreau să plece, spune.
They want to leave, he said. Who wants to leave? These people. And if they leave me behind, I'll be alone. And I said, what about me? I'm here with you. I know. Well, if you know, what are you afraid of? He was facing the wall and I was sleeping on the edge of the bed. He said, well, I won't be able to get up. But I've always helped you out of bed. You know that. I do, but I'm afraid they'll leave me behind. So I said, shut up and go back to sleep. And then suddenly, oh my God, he said, there's a man with a gun. What's he doing with a gun? He left it here for me. I realized he spoke well in full sentences. I'll take it to the cottage, he said. Do you want to go hunting in the middle of the night? Shut up and go to sleep, I said again. Next morning I'll call the priest and have him read to you from the Bible. Fine with me, he said. And then I looked out the window and immediately jumped out of bed. It was morning already and I had to go and feed the cows.
Mă uit la el. Când deschid ochii, ziua afară. Ei, ia mă, Doamne, dar vașile mi erau în graj. S-a fugat în pat. El era... Se duce afară să scoale. Am tras picioarele din pat. I-am pus un sfieter în spinat.
Later, Ila got up and I helped him get dressed. And for the first time, I had to help him open the door. He went into the garden, and when he came back, he sat down on the porch and said, I can't use my legs anymore.
Când a venit așa în șupă, am zis să intri în salon, pe treaptă de la s-a pus așa, adică pe mă lasă picioarele.
And I said, breathe in, like the doctor showed you. And he tried, but it didn't work. And I said, try harder, to encourage him. But he said, I can't do that anymore.
Păi nu așa, fă mai tare și tu nu așa, eu tot tare să-l încurajez. Fă așa. Tu fai, dar eu nu pot să fac așa. Fă așa tot de el.
Then we went inside. By the way, he said, I dreamed about my uncle last night. What was he doing, I asked. He said, I dreamed about my cousin and his wife as well. And I thought, but all 3 of them are dead. And I said to him, you've talked to them for a while, haven't you? He said, no. But we both knew what that dream meant, and my heart ached. I saw it in his eyes, how sad he was. They were standing in the cemetery, he went on, next to their crosses. And I said, don't worry, when you dream of someone dead, it means it will rain. And actually, it had rained a little in the morning.
Am văzut cât avânt răvoia și în drum la noi era numai frunze, că așa, cum bate așa cum avânt în mână tot în partea asta. Și eu îi mai tragă de pe el și îl pun în pat și mă duc să mătur în drum. Mătur, fuga și vin.
And I went to sweep the yard, and when I came back in, he asked me, where have you been that long? And I said, I'm back now, and I'll stay with you. I began looking for his new pajamas. He was still wearing the old one. He liked to sit in front of the gate and people would come up to him and have a talk, so I couldn't have him sit there in his old pajamas.
Eu copii lângă el, muie care a trecut să dea cu el de vorbă. Vă zic în pat, să iau de pe masă, să mă întorc să iau pijama. Când m-am întors să iau pijama, eu odată ce-ți poți face.
When I turned around to face him, I saw him fall back on the bed, and I cried, "Ila, what's wrong? What is it?" I started crying, and he said, "Don't cry." "How can you say that? Tell me, what do you want me to do for you?" "Nothing," he said. "That's it. There's nothing you can do." "But let me call Lenuța and tell her to come." He said, "No. Should I just stand here alone with you and watch you feel ill?" So I called my daughter. And Lenuța ran to get her cousin, and when they arrived, the cousin realized he was dying and said, "Let's get him dressed in his best suit." She didn't want him to die wearing his pajamas. He must have hurt her. And when she asked for a candle, I started crying. I refused to make him hold his own candle. And Lenuța climbed into bed next to him and hugged him. He only said, "Don't cry. It's over now."
Mergem la Timișoara. El ce-a fi spus, nu știu, că Lenuța când a ajuns a sărit în pat lângă el și l-a prins și totul e tot. El a spus că de-aia nu plângi, nu mai plângi, gata. Și cum am văzut atât, cât e ceasul?
After a while, he wanted to know what time it was. I said, "It's 11 in the morning." And then he died. But how could this man die? With all his love for playing music and having parties, they would all gather around him and he played the fiddle and sang for them.
Toți ar stat lângă el și a cântat cu el. Doamne, nu mă îmbătrâni că să mai pot a iubi.
"Sweetheart, I'm going to the forest. Come at noon when I will rest. Don't forget to bring some food, some tobacco for my mood. While the bulls will be eating hay, we'll smoke the tobacco away."
Dacă nu... Are rupt o coardă.
A cord is missing.
Cântam la vioară.
I used to play the violin when I was young.
Cântam la vioară, nu știu să cânt. Când n-aveam copii, eram...
I played before my daughter was born.
Prima, hai, lipsește. Mă cânt eu. Nerguș.
Where's the bow?
Lată-i frunza la pipar că am o mândră blăstămată.
My life is hot like a red pepper, 'cause my love is cursed. When the cock sings once, she's washed and combed. When the cock sings twice, she's dressed and adorned. When the cock sings thrice, she's waking her master. "Wake up, my dear, you've slept like a bear." But till he gets up on his hips, she's kissed 7 pairs of lips.
Da.
People are going to say I'm crazy.
Slavă ție, Dumnezeul nostru, slavă ție, Împărate Ceresc, Mângâietorule, Duhul adevărului, care pretutindeni și pe toate le împlinești, vistierul bunătăților și dătătorile de viață, vino și te să slășluiești întru noi și ne curățește bunele de toate întuneciunea. Slavă ție, Dumnezeul nostru, slavă ție, Împărate Ceresc, Mângâietorule, Duhul adevărului, care pretutindeni și pe toate le împlinești, vistierul bunătăților și dătătorile de viață, vino și te slășluiește întru noi și ne curățește pe noi de toate întuneciunea. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Slavă Tatălui și Fiului și Sfântului Duh și acum și pururea și în vecii vecilor. Amin. Domnului să ne rugăm, Doamne, miluiește! Mulțumim ție, stăpâne iubitorule de oameni, împăratul veacurilor și dătătorul bunătăților, care ai stricat peretele cel din mijloc al vrajbei. Doamne miluiește, Doamne miluiește, Doamne miluiește. Slavă Tatălui și Fiului și Sfântului Duh și acum și pururea și în vecii vecilor. Amin. Slavă ție, Dumnezeul nostru, slavă ție, Împărate Ceresc, Mângâietorule, Duhul adevărului, care pe tine și pe toate ne împlinești, visierul bunătăților, dătătorule de viață, vino și te sălășluiește într noi și ne curățește pe noi de toată întunăciunea. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Tatăl nostru care ești în cer, sfințească-se numele Tău, vie împărăția Ta, facă-se voia Ta, precum în cer, așa și pe pământ. Pâinea noastră, cea de toate zilele, dă-ne nouă astăzi și ne iartă nouă greșelile noastre, precum și noi iertăm greșiților noștri. Că Tu ești pacea noastră și Ție slavă înălțăm, Tatălui și Fiului și Sfântului Duh, acum și pururea și în vecii vecilor. Amin. Slavă ție, Dumnezeul nostru, slavă ție, Împărate Ceresc, Mângâietorule, Duhul adevărului, care pentru tine și pe toate le împlinești, vistierul bunătăților și dătătorule de viață, vino și te să slășluiește într noi și ne curățește bunele de toate întunăciunea. Slavă ție, Dumnezeul nostru, slavă ție, Împărate Ceresc, Mângâietorule, Duhul adevărului, care pentru tine și pe toate le împlinești, vistierul bunătăților, dătătorule de viață, vino și te sălășluiește într noi și ne curățește pe noi de toate întunăciunea. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără de moarte, miluiește-ne pe noi. Slavă Tatălui și Fiului și Sfântului Duh și acum și pururea și în vecii vecilor. Amin. Prea Sfântă Treime, miluiește-ne pe noi, Doamne, curățește păcatele noastre.
This is Creța, a mother of 8, but only one of her children is still alive. Her first 5 sons and daughters died when they were only a few months old. The 6th and the 7th of her children, 2 daughters, died when they were 30, leaving families behind. One died after a work accident, and the other one after an illegal abortion. Creța's only surviving child is today a man of 40. He lives together with his own family in his parents' house. When Creța and her husband Alexandru were young, couples got married in church or in village hall only when it became clear that they were able to have healthy children. The large expense of a marriage ceremony or a divorce was an obstacle for many poor families.
Codrele a fost sărac, n-a avut nici chimeașă pe el, că n-a avut tată. Era sărbătoare și eu mă duceam la părinții mei, le duc mâncare, el mergea până la Codru și vinea.
He didn't even have a proper shirt to wear, so he couldn't go dancing to meet more girls. He used to walk me to my parents' cottage. That's how we spent time together. He had a hard time growing up without a father. He asked me if I wanted to move in with him, and I didn't, so he moved in with us. First, we lived together for 15 years. Then we got married in Village Hall. We just brought gifts to the notary and the mayor, and we were married for 50 years.
Și am trăit cu el 50 de ani. Lui nu i-a convenit nici nimica.
But he was hard to please. You couldn't do him good and you couldn't do him wrong. He ate his heart out. So, dear, worry if you have to, but not all the time. You know how it feels when you have a fight. It's as if your heart were poisoned. But you shouldn't feel like that all day long, or you'll die before your time. Pray to God to be with you, and He'll take care of everything. You can't stay healthy if you're too upset, no matter what you are, man or woman. If you live with someone, you can't always have it your way. But Alexandru had to have it his way, all the time. When he drank, he yelled at us, but when he sobered up, he said nice things. He liked to work hard, but he drank too much. When he got drunk, in the evenings, he beat up my parents. And the next day, he greeted them, wishing them a good day. My father always said, the day is good because God made it to be good, not because you say it's good. You beat us up last night. So why didn't you beat me too, he asked. Because we've lost our own son in the war, and we love you like our own flesh and blood. Why beat you up?
El tășea, nu spunea nimic, vezi că îi devine el. M-a fost arțăgos când a băut. Soțul meu a fost la șantier la lucru.
My husband worked on building sites for many years. After he retired, he died because he smoked too much. He wasn't sick in bed. One day, the doctor examined him. Then he went outside to smoke, and the doctor saw him. He said, "Go home, Granddad, and come back in a few weeks. We have to renovate." And 3 weeks later, Alexandru was dead.
Dar el a trimis acasă, nu l-a mai primit, că l-a văzut că duvănește. Și până la 3 săptămâni a murit. Ea că așa a fost în drum, ca astăzi, vineri a fost atunci.
It was just like this, on a Friday. We were sitting on the bench in front of our gate. And Alexandru asked my son Ion for a cigarette, and I told him he shouldn't give him any. But Ion gave him the cigarette and then a second one, because he was afraid he'd get cursed. So we sat outside for quite some time. My husband was a wicked guy. He never gave the kids any money. That Friday he had picked up his pension. A little later we came inside, we had dinner, and my son and his wife went to their room. And Alexandru said, "Let's go sit with the kids." And we went to them and he said to Ion, "Here's money for you." And Ion said, "How come? You never gave me any before." "That's true," he said, "but now I do."
Am mers acolo și spune, n-ai Ioane banii la cine. Păi și că până acum nu mi-ai mai dat banii. Păi până acum nu ți-am dat, dar acum îți dau. Și atunci am dus acolo, i-a dat banii și...
After a while, Alexandru wanted to go to sleep, and I went with him to uncover the bed. Then I went back to the kids. And my son said, "What are you doing here?" And I said I wasn't sleepy. So we sat there watching TV, and suddenly I felt as if a knife pierced my heart. And I thought, my man is dying. And I went back to our room, and he asked me for some water. So I gave him water. And I looked at his face and thought, this is not the man he was before. His cheeks were blue. And I said, "Why are you blue in the face?" And he said, "I'm not blue in the face." And then I looked at his throat. There's a knot here. Everybody has one. But he had another one, just below. that was his soul on its way out. And I took the candle out of the cupboard. He was sitting up in bed, and I thought I'd better stay with him now. So we were talking, and suddenly he fell back on the pillows. I lit the candle and wanted him to hold it, and he said, "You are the laugh of the village. Do you think I'm dying?" "Well, I see you're not well," I said, and so I held the candle for him. And we talked some more, and suddenly he stretched himself once, twice, and then a third time, and then he was dead. And I set the candle up on the chair and went to get the kids. I had been afraid to leave and get them earlier, because he would have died without a burning candle. That's a sin for the one who stays behind. So I went to Ion, and he said, "What are you doing here at 1 in the morning?"
Păi și să ții de spune că a murit, dar n-a fost el în drum. Păi, să-l vezi. De el spune, trebuie, mămo, noi îl lăsăm aici și dimineața îl îmbrăcăm.
After he saw his father, Ion said, "Let's go to sleep. We'll get him dressed in the morning." And I said, "No way. He'd be stiff as a stick by then. We've got to wash and dress him now." But we had to get the corpse bathing tub from the church. So we went to see if anyone would open the door, but nobody heard us. So we went to my sister's, and her gate was locked as well. They were asleep. Then we went to my nephew's, Ionica. Luckily, he had a friend over. They were having drinks. So we told them what happened and what we needed, and Ionica said, "Well, I'll get you the tub we washed the pigs in." So we were 7 people in the end, and we washed him, we dressed him up nicely, and we laid him on the table.
Până la ziua l-am făcut lună. L-am spălat, l-am îmbrăcat și l-am pus pe masă. Am pus ceșaul alb, după alb am pus...
We laid out a white embroidered sheet, then a woven one made of wool, and then another white one on top. And we put a cushion under his head.
Așa se punea și îi stuc la cap.
He was laid out in the front room, and we were sleeping in the back. They say one shouldn't leave the dead alone, or their ghost will haunt the house. But we didn't care, we just went to sleep at night. And we kept him there for 3 days. People came over to see him, and we wailed him. Ion went to town to buy cakes and everything we needed to treat the mourners. Schnapps as well. So we had people over during the first 2 days, and on the 3rd day we buried him. We took him to the cemetery and handed out food and gifts to people so they would pray for him. And later we had a feast at our house. I baked 11 pies. We're a big family, you know. 40 days later, we had a memorial service in church with more food and more presents. And after 1 year, we had another one. And then we were done with him.
Și iar faci părăstasul la biserică. Și atunci gata, s-o goaie cu el. Când moare un mort, la noi îți trebuie pregătite 20 de peșchire.
When someone dies, you need 20 towels to give away as gifts to people, like those who carry the coffin. And to the wailing women, 15 women. In the summer, there aren't so many around, they're at work. But Alexandru died in the winter, and so all of them came.
Am fost acasă, că a fost luna februarie când el a murit. Da, dar trebuie să fii grijită cu 20 de peșchire.
I tell you, Baptists are better off. They don't have to do all this or to spend money on gifts. My parents were Baptists. Still, we offered a meal in their memory. We wanted to serve lamb.
Dar la ei nu se face nici pomană. În a 3-a zi l-am îngropat și în a 4-a zi ne-am dus la morminți.
The day after my husband was buried, we went to the cemetery, me and 2 other women. We weren't allowed to talk to anyone on the way. And one of the women had some water with her and a candle. And she did something to his cross so he wouldn't come back as a ghost. And then, from the cemetery, we went straight to the Danube. They say you take him to the Danube to drown him, I mean the ghost. But it doesn't really work. When my daughter Zina died, we threw her clothes into the Danube, but they didn't float away. They kept circling around a big log by the shore, just where her garden ends. Only after 40 days had passed, they finally floated away.
6 săptămâni. Și când a trecut 6 săptămâni, atunci a luat apă, s-a dus spre Dunăre. Nu le-am mai văzut. Omul când moare 6 săptămâni, sufletul e în casă.
Because when someone dies, the soul stays around the house for 40 days. There is something you can do against ghosts. You can light incense, but you have to stay inside for a while. If the ghost is outside, he won't enter because of the incense, so you'll be safe. Yes, we did all sorts of
El
things.
dacă vine la ușă, n-are voie să bage peste tămâni. Nu, murui. Da, am făcut, nu știu, cu tămâni, cât ce de tot. Numai asta, Zina.
Something happened to me once with my daughter Zina. I had to go to our cottage just after she died. I went to take the sheep from our neighbor there in the forest. It was still dark, and I wanted to get some more sleep. But suddenly I heard my dog bark. He was barking in a happy way, as if he knew who was there. I went outside to have a look, but there was no one there. Only my dog was wagging his tail happily. I remembered he knew my daughter, and I thought, this is Zina.
M-am gândit să asta e Zina. Eu m-am culcat în pat și am adormit. Când am adormit eu...
So I went back to bed and fell asleep. A little later, I woke up again and felt as if someone was stroking my feet. And then I felt as if a hand was caressing me on the head, and I said, Zina, is that you? Have you come to see me? And that was it. Nothing ever happened again.
M-a pus mâna pe cap. Atunci am spus, ei, Zino, tu ești tu, ai venit la Minsk. Și problema s-a dus, nu s-a mai auzit nimic. Atât am auzit. Da.
Adam died. He left Eve, and nobody knows which road he took. Did he find the key to open Eden's gate? There is someone who keeps a second key to that gate, someone who has been watching from the side since the grand beginning. A poet. Let me taste this first. It's better if I die, in case my mother-in-law has poisoned it. Let's do the paperwork.
Tuluc.
Așa, deci numele de familie Tuluc. T-U-L-U-C.
Da, Neculai.
Neculai.
Neculai. Da, Neculai. Așa. Și acum din nou.
Da. Spuneți întâi cine sunteți, vă prezentați, mă numesc.
Da. Mă numesc Neculai Tuluc.
My name is Neculai Tuluc. I'm 56 years old. I'm retired, but I still work on our land. I take care of the sheep, and I like to write poetry and compose music to it. I like to write in the night.
Câte o poezie, după aia o pun în melodie, o cânt și îmi place mai mult să scriu mai mult noaptea.
Can I sing O Adam now? I sing it when I'm out on the hill with my sheep.
Nu mă aude. Știți? Pot să încep, da. Aș vrea să spun, fără de păcat, mai e multe vorbe. Deshărăzit să fiu pustiu, patron de nos, paharul nou e gol.
I was free of sin and lonely, lonely like your first word. My glass was never empty. When you made me, had the clay been warm? Had the clay been warm? You whispered, and I came alive. I came alive, and you said, "Go now, rule the world." I can't find sleep. I hear your voice at night. Fill me to the edge with sadness. Fill me like an empty vessel. You gave me everything, except a tiny apple.
Pământul, dar nici de cum nu pot să dorm, auzind din somn cuvântul. Ce strie ai pus atunci, ai pus atunci în noi. Și ne-ai oprit, și ne-ai oprit, și ne-ai oprit doar mărul. Dar nu e tot sfânt în noi, nici patimele nu sunt toate iad.
I'm not that holy anymore, and I found that pain is not that painful either. Why did you let Lucifer come down on earth and be my neighbor? Now he will laugh. Now he will laugh at me and your creation, and all that sadness overflows. It doesn't fit inside me. Poor and hungry as I am, I think of you. I think of you, because you're here and everywhere, and I am nothing more than nothing.
Și mai mult gol gândesc la tine, Doamne, că existi. Sărac flămând și mai mult gol gândesc la tine, Doamne, că existi. Căci Tu mi-ești veșnic peste tot, iar eu sunt un nemic ce nu exist.